Welcome back, everybody, to the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Uxbridge with Reverend Patricia Hatch. Today, I'm going to be starting off with List's Constellation number 2. Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome again to the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Uxbridge. Welcome to those of you who are able to be present with us today in person, and those of you who are viewing us online. Welcome. Let us worship together. Today's opening words are adapted by Heidi Cottam. Let us be a faith that gathers, reaching for one another through the walls of hate that others build, through the cages of ignorance and arrogance, and through the fear that burns city streets. Let us be a faith that sees a vision of a better world, more compassionate, more just, more holy, and with more love. There is a faith that binds up the broken, soothes battle wounds with the balm of peace, sings louder than the trumpets of war. Let us be that faith, too. Let us be the ones who do not tread lightly in this world, but light it up with our love, who hold up the mirror of worth and dignity, who are the sanctuary others seek. But first, let us be a faith that worships together, here, this morning, in this space, at this moment. Let us be this faith. And you can please join me for opening hymn number 313. It's called, "Oh, What a Piece of Work Are We." I'm a little bit amused by the title, as I see some of you are, because piece of work didn't always have the kind of negative connotations it has now. So let's enjoy this hymn, even if we're slightly amused by it, and know that we are a wonderful work, this work of humanity. Number 313, you may rise and body your spirit.
Isn't that Shakespeare? What a piece of work.
Yes.
Hopeful and reason.
Right, and he meant that in a positive way. Yes, thank you. Did you hear that? Peter noted that it came from Shakespeare. Peter quoted it for us. All right, 313, rise and body your spirit, please.
There you go. Give you all a run through. Oh,
we try a new one. We'll now have the chalice lighting. I'd like to invite Peter to come forward and light our chalice. We light this chalice in honor of the Unitarian Universalist first principle to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. People near to us and people far from us. People we are friendly with and people we don't understand. And our own inherent worth and dignity too. All people. Thank you, Peter. And please join me for the unison affirmation of this congregation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I now would like to invite you in a time of sharing candles of joy and concern. I will light this candle. We can light the smaller candles from. So I invite you to come forward, say your name, and share what joy or sorrow you would like to share with the community. I will start. I recently corresponded with Leslie, our dear member and friend. She had surgery this past week, and she said she's doing okay, but she is very sore. And I asked her if she would like me to light a candle for us, and she said she would love that. So let us all join together in thinking of Leslie for her healing and well-being and strength and courage and hope. Who else would like to come forward this morning?
I guess a candle of thanks. There are many reasons to be thankful for, right? I've lit a candle in the past couple times, and now I guess it's at a stage where I can just share it to another level. This is a thanks to hospice, which is, I don't know if it's new, I'm sure it's old as the hills, but at least now it's an official way to let people go out gracefully with respect in their own home, trying to help them, as opposed to, no, we need miracles, we need to bring people back, and 6 months is worth how many thousands of dollars and how much chemicals to fight. Now, talk to me when I'm facing cancer, am I going to fight or am I just let me go? But my mother-in-law is receiving hospice, so, and my wife is doing a noble job, and it's going very nicely. But who knows, you know? So one day at a time. Small things in life, just 1 or 2 degrees temperature. The snow was looked heavy, big fat, but you get, especially on pavement where it begins to melt a little bit, you just push it off, and it is beautiful.
Thank you, Peter. We'll be thinking of your mother-in-law and family.
Good morning. This is I guess a candle of, thoughts and prayers to good friends of ours. Brother passed away this past Sunday. He was 41, left 2 boys, and the good friends of ours, I'm sure, it was his sister. So anyway, just thoughts and prayers for them.
Thinking of your friend's family as they grieve the loss of their brother.
I have a candle of joy for my friend who has been taking care of her husband who lost his leg. And on Peter's note, she just received hospice care. And it's been wonderful for him and her because they've given him morphine so they can move him and take care of him without him being sore. So it's a wonderful, wonderful program. They're supplying a new bed for him, a new hospital bed, and it's wonderful. It's a great program.
Thinking of your friend and her husband as they deal with this, and hearing your notes of gratitude for hospice. Is there anyone else who'd like to light a candle this morning?
I always feel like there's a lot of weight that comes with just being honest with yourself and saying certain things out loud. So for me personally this year, my sisters, I feel I want to be more present in their life. My sister, who's 22, doesn't drive, she needs someone to help teach her how to drive. My 50-year-old sister doesn't drive, begging people to help her drive. She works at Dunkin' Donuts, hates the job, right, and has no means of getting out. I want to be more present, and I feel like they're right there, and I never get to be more present with them. So I need to do that. There's no one else to do it. I need to make sure I do that. So hopefully that's my aim. That's what I want.
Where
You
does
can
she live?
use one of the newer ones if you.
I got a little one, but
All right.
Where does she live then?
I got 2 of them, so give them another one. There we go. Thanks.
We're thinking of you with your intention to help your younger sisters learn to drive and be more present with them.
This is a candle of joy. My daughter and her wife just purchased a house. And it's in Millville, and they are in the process of moving from where they rented to their new house. Everybody's excited.
Congratulations to your daughter and her wife and family for purchasing a house.
This one came in on the chat. So a candle for all those that are recovering and dealing with COVID still, particularly those in direct care roles that are taking care of people, like, you know, we talked about hospice a lot this morning. But particularly for Sonia's program, they're dealing with a lot in the neurocare group right now, both with individuals and people taking care of those individuals. So candle for them.
Thank you for sharing the candle for those suffering with COVID and those taking care with them, like people in Sonia's program, and many other people we may be holding in our hearts. Are there any other candles this morning? I'll light the final candle for those things that remain unspoken in our hearts and minds. And now I'd like to invite you into a time of meditation. This meditation has 3 parts. I have words. Today's words are from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher. And after the words, I will play my singing bowl, and then we will play Spirit of Life. Matt will play Spirit of Life, and we will sing it together, continuing in that spirit of meditation. From Thich Nhat Hanh. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become holy ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life, with awareness of the suffering that is going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and peace on earth. Let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and peace on earth. Peace. The establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. teeth. Today's story is called Abu Qasim's Shoes. It's an Arabian tale. Also has Persian sources as well. Abu Qasim was a merchant who was known throughout Baghdad. He was a clever merchant, perhaps the richest in the city, but he was known for being a mean miser. He never gave away even one penny, and his family lived in a house with no furniture and only the poorest of clothing. Abu Qasim's stinginess showed in the way he dressed. He wore a tattered and patched old robe and a faded headscarf. He was known most of all for his very worn, very patched shoes. He had owned these shoes for 20 years, never seeing the need to replace them when they wore out. He simply had the cobbler patch them until the shoes were a mass of patches, sewn on top of patches, and so heavy with all the extra leather that he could barely even pick up his feet when he walked. When people heard his shuffling step, they said, "There goes Abu Qasim and his big, heavy shoes, a tighter-fisted man we have never known." One day, Abu Qasim, as a merchant, struck a particularly favorable bargain for some lovely jars and some nice perfume to fill them with. He left the jars on his windowsill and he went off to celebrate by having a warm soak in the public bath. When he came out of the bath, he was amazed to find a brand new pair of leather shoes in the place where his had been. Thinking that he had been given a gift and muttering to himself about this luck that had got him out of buying new shoes, he slipped on the brand new pair and strode down the street. Soon afterward, the judge of the town, the chief judge, came out of the bath and looked around for his shoes. Instead, he found some very old and very tattered, stinking old shoes. He knew instantly who had taken his brand new shoes, and he ordered that Abu Qasim be arrested and brought to court. When Abu Qasim was in front of him, the judge angrily said, "You stole my shoes, and now you must pay a fine of 500 dinars or go to jail." No matter how much Abu Qasim tried to explain it was a mistake, the judge wouldn't listen. Abu Qasim left the court 500 dinars poorer, carrying his heavy shoes by the laces. On the way home, Abu Qasim threw the shoes into the Tigris River, thinking he was done with them. A little while later, some fishermen downstream pulled on their net, thinking they had caught a big fish. When the net surfaced, they saw it held Abu Qasim's ugly, heavy shoes. And the nails in the shoes had ripped holes in the net that would require a full day to repair. Angrily, they took the soggy shoes and threw them through Abu Qasim's window, smashing all his beautiful jars of expensive perfume. As Abu Qasim looked at the shoes, sitting in the mess of broken glass and perfume, he vowed to be rid of the wretched shoes so they could do him no further harm. He decided that he would bury them in his garden. And as he was digging a hole with his shovel to bury the shoes, his next-door neighbor saw him digging and assumed he must be burying treasure, which was against the law. Thus, the neighbor reported him to the authorities. the merchant found himself back before the same angry judge. Abu Qasim insisted he was only burying his old shoes. However, the court laughed uproariously at what they thought was his attempt to conceal an illegal purpose. 50,000 dinars fine this time. You will not break the law anymore, you stingy miser, decreed the judge. On the way home from court, Abu Qasim cursed the heavy old shoes and decided to travel to the far side of town to drop the shoes in an open sewage channel. You belong with the sewage, he said to his shoes, flinging them away, as far away as he could. Well, those shoes floated down the sewer pipes, from the larger pipes to the smaller, more narrow pipes, and eventually they came to a stop, blocking the sewer pipe completely. The pipe filled with sewage, which backed up into the streets and even into people's homes. When the workmen came to fix the problem, guess what they found? Abu Qasim's shoes blocking the pipe and causing a sewage disaster for the town. Needless to say, back to court he went. You and your shoes have befouled the whole town, the judge said. I order you to pay 500,000 dinars for the cleanup. Abu Qasim had to pay this, but it took him nearly all the money he had hoarded his entire life. And the shoes were returned to him. Abu Qasim, now completely desperate, decided to burn the shoes. They were still wet, so he set them on the balcony to dry. A dog saw them and played with them. One of the shoes fell from the dog's jaws and dropped to the street below, where it fell on the head of a woman passing by and knocked her to the pavement. The woman's husband hauled the broken and impoverished man back before the judge. Enough, said Abu Qasim. Take everything I own, but please, he said to the judge, write an order that allows me to disown any responsibility for what my shoes may do from now on. Trying hard not to smile, the judge agreed. Abu Qasim was a different man after that. He paid attention to others, giving to the poor and helping his neighbors. He finally took proper care of his family's needs. He learned to take care of others, and he learned to take care of himself. And when his shoes wore out, he did not fail to buy himself a new pair. That's the story of Abu Qasim. Okay, I've got another fun bit for the call for the offering. I've been trying jokes, so you can let me know if this is working or not. Jokes for the offering. What's the difference between cats and dogs? Dogs look at people and they say, they feed us. They give us shelter. They take care of our every need. They must be gods. Cats look at people and say, they feed us. They give us shelter. They take care of our every need. We must be gods. In the 19th century, Thomas Starr King was asked to describe the difference between Unitarians and Universalists. Thomas said, Universalists believe that God is too good to damn anyone to hell forever. Unitarians believe they are too good to be damned. And so are Unitarians cats and Universalists dogs? I don't know. In any case, the morning's offering will now be gratefully received. Would the ushers please come forward to collect the offering? And I think there is a link online for those of you who are watching. And we thank you for all of those who give. And I'll let Matt introduce the offertory.
Today's offertory will be Looking Out My Back Door by John Fogerty of CCR.
We're supposed to be singing this, huh?
Yep.
Here.
Or listening at least.
Sorry? Thank you, Paul. Just cut off me in the
Thank you. Let us now join together in a responsive reading. It is number 594 in the back of the hymnal. It is called Principles and Purposes for All of Us, adapted from the Unitarian Universalist Association Principles and Purposes. So the line that I read is the actual principle, and the line in italics that we all read together is an interpretation. Number 594. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We believe that each and every person is important. We affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
We believe that all people should be treated fairly.
We affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. We believe that our churches are places where all people are accepted and where we keep learning together. We affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We believe that each person must be free to search for what is true and right in life. We affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process. We believe that all people should have a voice and a vote about the things which concern them. We affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We believe that we should work for a peaceful, fair, and free world. We affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part.
We believe that we should care for our planet
Earth. So today's sermon is called Inherent Worth and Dignity. And it's about the first principle. It has a little of the history of the principles. Since this is the first sermon I'm doing about the principles, I'll do at least one, maybe a few more. Or we also have Unitarian Universalist sources. There are 6 sources of our faith. So maybe I'll do a sermon on the sources of our faith too. We don't talk about them as much, but I find them very inspiring. But today we're talking about the first principle, inherent worth and dignity. And I think if you ask a lot of Unitarian Universalists which principles they know or which principles they resonate most with, they might say the first one, affirming the inherent worth and dignity of all people, and they might say the 7th one, that we are part of the interconnected web of life. A few years ago, a young and successful executive named Josh was traveling down a Chicago neighborhood street, going a bit too fast in his sleek, new red sports car. He was watching for kids darting out from between parked cars, and he slowed down when he thought he saw movement. As his car passed through one neighborhood, no children were playing in the street. However, a small rock smashed, thwack, into the car's shiny red door. He slammed on the brakes and backed it up to the spot where the rock had made contact. Josh jumped out of the car, grabbed the kid, and pushed him up against the parked car. He shouted at the kid, "Just what the heck are you doing? That's my new car. That rock you threw is going to cost you a lot of money. Why did you throw it?" "Please, mister, please," the boy said. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I threw the brick because no one else would stop." Tears were dropping down the boy's chin as he pointed around behind the parked car next to them. "It's my brother, mister," he said. "His wheelchair rolled off the curb and he fell out of the chair, and I can't lift him to put him back in the chair. I needed to get someone's attention." Now sobbing, the boy asked the stunned man, "Would you please help me get him back into his wheelchair? He's hurt, and he's too heavy for me to lift." Moved beyond words, Josh desperately tried to swallow the rapidly swelling lump in his throat. Straining, he lifted the young man back into the wheelchair, and he took out his handkerchief and wiped the scrapes and cuts and checked to make sure everything was going to be okay. "Thank you, and may God bless you," the grateful child said to the stranger. Too shook up for words, Josh watched as the boy pushed his wheelchair-bound brother down the sidewalk back toward their home. Josh walked very, very slowly back to his car. The damage was noticeable in the door. but Josh never bothered to ever repair the dented door. He kept the dent there to remind him that people are more important than things. We Unitarian Universalists have 7 principles. They are not a creed, which is a fixed statement of faith. And they are not a literal description of the world that exists. They are statements, they are values and visions that we share as people of very different theologies, but who can unite together around in faith. Our first principle states that we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Where did our 7 principles come from? There was a discussion of a merger between the Unitarians and the Universalists as early as 1865. However, in some congregations, Unitarians and Universalists started working together even before then. Like in our very own congregation, when Reverend Aidan Ballou was installed as minister here in the early 1830s, about half of the minister participants in the service were Unitarians, and the other half were Restorationists, which were a kind of Universalist. But anyway, there were discussions of a merger between these 2 denominations as early as 1865. However, it wasn't until 1959 until the 2 churches could iron out the details and agree to a full merger, almost 100 years later. That's because it wasn't easy. There was much conflict between the generally humanist Unitarians and the more spiritual Universalists. It was a big challenge to bring these 2 different denominations with different beliefs together as one entity. And the merger did not develop one common belief. It wouldn't have worked if they had to say everyone had to believe the same thing. So instead, they made agreement of shared principles. In fact, both parties almost abandoned the merger as a result of whether one sentence should read "our heritage" or "the heritage." They had to iron out every difference. However, eventually both denominations worked out their conflicts. The principles were written and the merger occurred in 1961. Though similar, the principles then weren't the same as our principles we have today. This is how the 1961 principles read. Number 1, to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. Number 2, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. Number 3, to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relationships. Number 4, to implement our vision of one world by striving for a world community founded on ideals of brotherhood, justice, and peace. Number 5, to serve the needs of member churches and fellowships, to organize new churches and fellowships, and to extend and strengthen liberal religion. Number 6, to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. That is the 1961 version. You might notice that the words were not inclusive by today's standards. They were very man-centric, talking about man, men, brotherhood. As the feminist movement grew in the 60s and 70s, UU women's groups, and some men as well, began working toward more inclusive language. But how does one change our principles? Fortunately, the people who worked to make the merger a success were wise to include in the bylaws a requirement that the principles be reviewed at least every 15 years. They were never set to be a fixed creed. They were always set to be a living document that would be renewed and reviewed and perhaps changed. So a rewriting of the principles began in 1981, which cleared up the sexist language. Among other changes that were made, 1 was added with little controversy, and 2 that became sticklers. Principle number 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, was not included in the original principles. It was added when the other changes were made in the 1980s. This principle had been overwhelmingly mandated by the survey responses sent out to churches and fellowships all across the country. So many people thought we needed to include this in our principles. The time was right for recognizing our connection to the whole web of life. Regarding the two issues that were sticklers, some thought we should note the Christian origins of our two merged denominations in the principles, and others thought we shouldn't. The Judeo-Christian reference was removed in the principles. Reverend Harry Holler came up with a solution to the problem that created much controversy, the controversy of whether to refer to God and the Judeo-Christian tradition in some way or not. Holler suggested dividing the statement into two parts. First, the 7 principles, followed by references to the living traditions we share, now known as the 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism. That started as 5 sources. It was 2 parts, principles and sources. I think we need to hear more about the sources that inspire our faith. But today we're talking about the principles, and particularly the first principle. No one objected to language about Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love when it appeared as part of a summary of historical influences. There was also much debate about the word supreme. If you might recall, when I read the 1961 version, it didn't say inherent worth and dignity. It said supreme worth of each person. After much discussion, a compromise was made to replace the word supreme with the word inherent to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of people. So how did people understand supreme? Did they think that that was related to God somehow? Did they think that supreme, that a person's worth and dignity can't ever be eroded, where it's inherent, that it could be eroded or hidden or rejected? There were a lot of different ways to look at how they might have thought of supreme, but it was decided a good compromise was to say inherent, that kept much of the meaning. Hello and welcome. So nice to see you here, especially after your trip over Christmas time. And our greeter will give you orders of service. I'm in the middle of a sermon about the first principle of Unitarian Universalism, which affirms the inherent worth and dignity of all people, which means that everyone's important. Everyone's important. Those people who are like us and those people who are not like us. Those people we love and like, those people we don't even love and like. Everyone is important. So our 7 principles, as they are now, were passed at the 1985 Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. When people question our first principle, it's usually that word inherent that gets in the way. How and why are humans inherently worthy and due respect? Can people's worth and dignity sometimes be diminished or rejected? I'm just putting those questions out there. I think that we all have inherent worth and dignity. But as Unitarian Universalists, we don't always agree. So you might understand inherent differently. Many religious traditions inform us of the sacredness of life and of each person. In the Quaker tradition, there is an understanding of the inner light in each person. In the Hindu religion, one common greeting is Namaste, which means the divine in me honors the divine in you. Every human life is sacred in Islam. In widespread Jewish and Christian understanding, people were made in the image of God, as proclaimed in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Scriptures. If people are created in the image of God, we have value and worth and share some of God's attributes, like creativity and love. What matters is that we treat ourselves and others as having worth and dignity. Philosopher Immanuel Kant said that rational human beings should be treated as an end to themselves and not as a means to something else. Human beings should be treated as an end in themselves and not as a means to something else. The fact that we're human has value in itself. If a person is an end in itself, it means their inherent value doesn't depend on anything else. It doesn't depend on whether the person is happy with their life. It doesn't depend on whether the person is improving other people's lives. People exist and so have value. Humanizing people leads to human flourishing. And dehumanizing a member of another group is strongly associated with feelings of hostility and aggression toward that group. Researchers Emily Brunel and Noor Kelly suggest that when people have feelings of hostility and violence, those feelings feed cycles of intergroup violence. And intergroup violence can escalate and even lead to genocide. Escalate and even lead to genocide. Treating people as sacred is not only helpful, it is vitally important to the well-being of our race. If we really believe that all people have worth and dignity, how do we put this into practice? There are many ways. We can start close to home, beginning with ourselves. If we ever have feelings and thoughts of worthlessness, we can counter them with our self-talk and affirm that we have worth and inherent goodness that we simply need to work to manifest more and more in our lives. If we fall down metaphorically, we have the ability to pick ourselves back up, just like we do physically. We can tell ourselves things to lift ourselves up about our worth and dignity instead of negative things that bring ourselves down. And we can show our loved ones and friends that they are important to us and dignify them by giving them our undivided attention when they need it. Sometimes it's okay to work and talk at the same time. Other times, people need our undivided attention. When we give up the temptation to multitask when someone really needs to talk to us, we are affirming their worth and dignity. What can we do in the wider community to live out this principle? We can treat people we meet, like cashiers and store and restaurant workers, as people and not as a means to an end. Perhaps if we ask someone for help finding an item in a store, we can greet them first. Maybe thank them by name. Think to ourselves that they're a person with inherent worth and dignity. They're not there just to serve you. And then we can visit or call neighbors or parishioners who are homebound or in a nursing home. We can invite someone who doesn't have family nearby over for a meal or a holiday. We can donate or volunteer with Milford Community Meals. We can work to end homelessness, racism, and domestic violence. All those things are the exact opposite of the experience of worth and dignity. We can support prison reform, and we can work for peace. There is no shortage of good causes of things we can work for. And how can we affirm the worth and dignity of those who are not acknowledging the worth and dignity of others? I'm just putting this question out there for you to ponder on. How can we affirm the worth and dignity of those who are not acknowledging the worth and dignity of others? Is there a way we can acknowledge their worth and dignity and model for them how that is, even while they're not doing it? How do you choose to affirm the worth and dignity of yourself and of others around you? How do you do it now, and in what ways can you grow and do a better job of affirming the worth and dignity of those around you? One way is to not treat people as obstacles. That if we're ever in a hurry, say, in the grocery store or on the road, and someone gets in our way or someone has a huge pile in front of us, instead of bemoaning this person that's there blocking our way, what if we take a moment to just center ourselves and understand that this person who might be in our way, in our hurry, is an opportunity to practice understanding them as a person of worth and dignity, and to send them good thoughts. And yes, our feelings of impatience may not go away, but we can slowly retrain ourselves. And this is something I want to work on, being aware of the worth and dignity of people all around me in every situation. I think it's a growing edge for many of us. And in fact, this is one reason why this quote I'm going to share with you inspires me so much. The quote came from a friend named Stephen. Stephen said, when I was about 20 years old, an acquaintance said something in a discussion that has stuck with me all my life. She said, when I'm talking with a person or having a meaningful conversation and they ask me, what religion are you? Or what church do you attend? I feel that any answer I would give would be misleading, insulting, and untrue. For any religion or church I'd mention would do an injustice to the fact that at that particular moment, that interaction with that person is my spiritual community, is my church. Doesn't mean you need to stop going to church. Please don't. But to understand that every action, every interaction that we have with another person is a sacred opportunity. What a glorious way to live. Let us grow toward that. What if we treated every person we interact with as a sacred being with worth and dignity? And what if we lived as if every encounter with another individual is a sacred encounter, which it is. May we have eyes to see and hearts to know, and an intention, an ability, and will to practice that. Amen, and blessed be. Thank you. It's now time for announcements. Oh, I'll just mention now that the organ postlude at the end of the service is All Night Long by Lionel Richie. I just have a couple announcements. The food collection for the Milford Community Meals is ongoing. There's a box in the entryway. Please bring in food that we can share with those people that are food insecure in the greater Milford community. They're looking for things like soups and pastas and chilies and cans, breakfast foods, bottles of water. You can leave them in the box when the church is open, or even leave them on the front steps and we can bring them in, people who have keys. We are scheduled to have a potluck after the church service on February 6th. We hope we can do this, but it is up in the air at this time due to the increasing numbers of cases of COVID. So a decision will be made in the next week or so. If we're having the potluck, I hope you can all join and participate. But we'll let you know and announce that in email and in worship. Are there any other announcements this morning?
There will be a governing board meeting in 2 weeks from today, following coffee hour.
Thank you, Peter. Peter reminded us there is a governing board meeting 2 weeks from today following coffee hour. Are there any other announcements? All right, well, let's join together in singing our closing song then. It's number 159, This Is My Song. You may rise and bow to your spirit as we sing together. We'll now extinguish the chalice. We have gathered in love, worshiped in hope, and lifted our hearts in peace. We go now to share these blessings with the world. Please join together in saying the Serenity Prayer. God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And benediction, words by Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, or our care for one another. We don't leave our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith. Until we are together, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving. Amen. Go in peace.
Hey, don't get too rowdy now. Too crazy. Watch out, guys. you go. Happy New Year. Yeah, right?
It's hard to play with a family.
Oh, it's so tough, so hard. That's so tough, okay.